Welcome everyone to the Hurting Humanity channel. It's election day, or I should say fake election day, which obviously has nothing to do with you picking who is going to represent the United States of America as its quote unquote leader. And it has everything to do with your consent to be governed. 99.9% of the population, even though they think they're informed, are not informed. They don't even know what their constitutional rights are. They don't know the difference between a monarchy and popular sovereignty. So if you're wondering what this is really about, have you ever noticed how so many celebrities, so many people in power are so pushy to get you to go and vote? How we've always heard people say, well, if you don't vote, you don't have a right to complain. Celebrities wearing all of these t-shirts. Nobody thinks twice about it. All these shirts about vote now, your voice matters. Because of course they care so much about your vote and who you vote for. You ever notice how, even though we all know how they lean in their voting, that they just want you to vote, they don't really care who you vote for. It's about you using your quote unquote power, but it's not about you using your power. It's about you giving your consent to be governed. And that's what I'm going to go into detail about in this video. The consent to be governed. Think about how many people out there are actually voting. They claim in the 2020 election that 66.8% of citizens, surprise, it's not 66.6% of citizens 18 years or older were voting. That still leaves a large majority of people who do not vote. And have you noticed how more and more people are getting sucked into this psychosis and actually voting, which actually enables the problem that we're having with a government that is completely sold out the people? You see, it's the people who grant the government power, not the other way around. But most people think that you're born in this country, the United States of America, and you're automatically born into this government, but you really have to opt into the government. You notice how so many illegals, the stories they keep telling us about how people who are not U.S. citizens are allowed to vote in this election. That's because you don't have to be a U.S. citizen to vote in the actual election. You have to give your consent to be a part of this government. And the only actual change that can be made, the only actual revolution that could occur, is when you stop participating, when you stop consenting to be governed by people who have proven that they're not working for you. Don't forget, when I've covered in the past the secret covenant of the Illuminati, and one of the lines in there is, we will establish their governments and establish opposites within. We will own both sides. And by owning both sides, it actually prevents the citizens from doing what the Constitution is set up for us to do. In other words, the Declaration of Independence states, government deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government. Now, in this world in 2024, that sounds like radical thinking. That sounds like extremist thinking. Of course, they've weakened people through so many different means of mind control that most people out there would actually believe that those words out of the Declaration of Independence actually sound like extremist terms. But throughout history, the citizens have taken matters into their own hands when the government has proven that they're destructive. Now, what do you say looking around us, no matter what political party you're affiliated with, that the government looks extremely destructive? But the problem is that most people don't realize that the civilians are really the ones who are supposed to have the power. And if the government no longer serves the people are supposed to abolish it or alter it or take control into their own hands. They don't want you to think like that. And that's why Donald Trump is so important to everything that's going on, because he is the one that they created to actually prevent a real revolution. Because the majority of people who vote Republican would say, we're not participating in this anymore. We're revolting against this. This is insanity, the stuff that they're getting away with. It's criminal. It's not borderline criminal. It's criminal, including what they just did with mandates, lockdowns, and removing people's right to earn income or make a living in this country. The civilians would say, that's it. It's enough. We're not participating in this anymore, and we're not giving you the power to reign over us. And that's why Donald Trump is so important, because every single citizen that feels violated is going and casting a vote for Donald Trump, preventing an actual revolution from occurring. Now, people need to understand divine right versus popular sovereignty. Popular sovereignty is another name for the consent to be governed. Popular sovereignty versus a monarchy, right? The divine right. In other words, in other countries, when you're born into that country and you live and you're a citizen in that country, divine right is what the queen claims to have and the king claim. These people all claim to have these things, and the civilians enable them to continue to have this power, even though the government has shown how destructive they are. They're talking about locking you down permanently because of your carbon emissions. The things that they have planned are absolutely insane. They're utterly insane that we're going along with it, and we have been for this long. But popular sovereignty versus divine right. Popular sovereignty is a political theory that the government is created by and is subject to the will of the people. And it's not a theory, it's a fact. It is based on the idea that the people are the source of all political legitimacy, and that the government's power is not legitimate if it ignores the will of the people. Now, wouldn't you listen to that statement no matter how you vote? And I'm saying that for people who might stumble upon my video who are Democrats, right? If Donald Trump is placed back in power, what is it that those people are going to beg for? His removal from power. Do they know that it's their actual right to not participate in this government, that the legitimacy of this government relies on you being under hypnosis and going and casting your consent at the ballot box? No, they don't know that. And they refuse to actually know that. They don't seem to want to know what their God-given rights are versus what these people want to take from you. And they aren't just going to take it from you willingly. You have to consent to it. And that's why they are constantly so hell-bent. They beg you to go and vote. And what do they do on the flip side of that? They shame people out there who don't vote. They tell you, you don't have a right to an opinion if you don't play in our game, right? How many celebrities out there have we seen with shirts like, your voice matters, right? Every celebrity standing side by side with one of the political actors that are pretending to be president of the United States. When in fact, we're really just empowering the corporations who run the United States of America. Vote, vote, vote. You've got to vote. My favorite of all the years has been Vote or Die. Literally telling you, go vote or die. If you don't want to partake in our government, if you don't want to partake in our scheme, go and die. And of course, that was led by none other than Puff Daddy, right? And a lot of the other celebrities who just seem so hell-bent on getting your participation. Well, of course, most of the celebrities couldn't care less, but their handlers tell them to go out there and to make sure that they talk to whatever amount of followers they have and that they need to go and consent to this. They need to go and consent to be governed by us. Not who are you going to vote for? What are you going to vote for? Now, of course, we know all the celebrities align with the Democrats, but you may remember over the years, all of these ads that have come out where they literally brought every single celebrity they could possibly find. And they told you that you need to vote. And if you don't vote, you don't have a right to anything else. Inside of their government, of course, is what they mean.
Tomorrow's a big day. Now, who's going to get out there and vote?
When are you going? Are you going before work? Are you going after? Do you have a plan? Do you have a ride?
If you know someone who needs a ride or a kick in the ass, get them there.
Your employer can't tell you you don't have time.
No one has the right to stop you from casting your vote.
Elections aren't decided by a majority. They're decided by the majority of those who show up and vote.
Because I can drive. Not well, but I can drive.
Tomorrow, let's show them how it's done.
Day after tomorrow, I'm sleeping in.
You have work!
Till then, I'm sleeping in.
Just get out and vote.
And then that's it. And then your power's gone. You have no choice.
It's very easy. It takes a few seconds. The website is right here.
You're probably online right now, aren't you?
You can literally register to vote while you're pooping if you have a laptop.
All you need is a mouse.
What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wait around while you, write this information down.
Me too.
I'll wait as well.
I'll wait too. I'm gonna take off my bra under my shirt.
I mean, this is really only about your future. So we don't want to interrupt, you know.
What are you doing, watching TV?
You're obviously smart enough to play Scrabble on this thing, or poker, or whatever you're doing, or porn. It's none of my business.
I'm waiting, just waiting for a couple of people.
I know, we got to go.
No, it's important. They need to register.
You know, we're kind of waiting around for it. I mean, I remember watch, but I'll wait a little. You know, I'll wait a little while longer while you do this.
What are you up to later? You want to hang out? After you're done registering, that's a possibility.
You really know how to work this?
Oh, no.
Okay, so look, if you're like me and you're already registered to vote, that's cool, but your responsibility goes much deeper than that. I need you to take this and send it to 5 people.
Just send it to 5 people that care as much as you think you care.
5 friends!
God, I hope you have at least 5 friends.
I did have 5 friends.
If you have more, send it to more friends.
They'll watch it. They'll do the same thing.
And they're gonna tell 5 of their friends. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 friends.
And they'll send it to 5 friends.
And then it'll be exponentially
5 friends and 5 friends.
And then 5 and 5 and 5.
To 5 friends, and they're gonna send it to 5 friends, and then it's gonna be like
rampant, like herpes, but for positive.
I mean, seriously, after all this, after this whole video, if you're not gonna vote, I don't even know what to say to you anymore. You know you have to vote.
Because you know you gotta vote, right? I mean, you know that, right?
Wait a second. Sorry. Did you register?
Yes.
You did?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm talking about. What's your name?
Julie.
You gotta be like Julie.
So they seem overly obsessed, don't they? That should be the thing that people are thinking about when it comes time for the election, right? Think to yourself about, boy, they're really pushy with getting me to participate in this, with getting me to consent to actually be governed by these people. But what earlier in the video when I talked about the 2020 election, all the data that they give us are usually off. But when they're telling us that 67% of citizens who are eligible to vote, even that statistic tells us that there's a large majority of us out there who do not participate in this. There's a large majority of people because they would give you a much higher number than that. So let's just say 50% of the population are actually voting. And it's just like we saw with the overcrowding in the hospitals, right? We're seeing these lines that are astronomical. This is all propaganda. There are a lot of people who are partaking in this side, but there's also a lot of people who are saying, you know what, I've had enough. I don't like either person. I don't think either person is good for this country. And that's the mindset people should have, because neither person is good for the country, because neither person is actually going to serve as the president. And clearly, based on the behavior of what we're seeing from these politicians, it's time for the people to take away the power. And the only way you could take away the power is by not consenting. Imagine if everybody out there just shut it all off. You shut off the propaganda machine, you shut off the tech, and you said, you know what? We're not granting you guys power anymore to rule over us because you're telling us that people should castrate kids. You're telling us what we need to put inside of our body. You're doing what we would call government overreach on a day in, day out basis. Almost every aspect of our lives, you're meddling in, you're getting involved in, and that's not what the government is there to actually do. Think about how many of those people who don't vote, how many of us could actually get together and institute new government? Because that's really what the Constitution is set up to do. If the government goes rogue, so to speak, the people have the power to set up a new government. These are things they don't want you to know, but they're also things that you can know, that you should know, but they don't expect you to actually try and do it. Because, of course, they'll label you a terrorist. They'll label you an extremist. They'll label you all sorts of stuff, but it's our God-given right. It's our God-given right. We should all just be taking a second here, standing there, thinking about what's been going on in the world and say, this is wrong. The anxiety, the stress, how everybody hates one another now based on who they vote for. This is all created by them, not by us, by them. Nobody is picking these people that they're putting out there as the Republican nominee and the Democratic nominee. It's a show. It's a charade. You need to have X amount of money, millions upon millions of dollars to even get on a ballot. That's not the way that the Constitution was set up in the first place. Somebody like you or me would be able to run. And people go, well, you're not going to have the money to run. How are you going to put commercials and all this other stuff out there? But it's more than that. You literally have to have millions of dollars to have your name on a ballot. You could vote somebody in, you could write my name on a ballot or your name on a ballot and cast it, but nobody else out there is obviously going to know who you are. And that's the way this whole thing has been set up. It's been set up against the people. So one of the things that everybody should constantly notice is how pushy. When the government gets pushy, they get pushy for a reason. They got pushy to get you to poison yourself. They were obsessed with it. Every celebrity out there is doing the same thing that they were doing it then, they're doing it now for voting. And they do it every 4 years for voting because it's their job as social influencers to convince you to give up your rights and to partake and consent to be governed by these people who aren't even elected in the first place. You're pretty much signing away your consent to be governed in what really is a monarchy now. I mean, let's be real. I mean, it's always kind of been a monarchy, depending on when you look back at history, when you think this whole thing got intercepted. I mean, we could all look back at George Washington being a Freemason and just say it's been corrupt from the beginning. But we've never seen government overreach like we're seeing now. We've never seen a psychosis like we're seeing now. And that's thanks in large part to the technology that's in place, the consumption of media 24/7, people constantly being on their phone. They have created this hypnosis around us. We're literally watching trauma-based mind control unfold in front of us every single day. They're putting us through it. And we're seeing the effects of it on how unhinged and unstable the majority of our society is. And it's all because of these people. It's all because of these celebrities who work with the corporations, who work with these actors that call themselves politicians. And if the people realize that their vote didn't count anyway, that all they're doing is consenting to be governed, and then they're going to choose whichever person fits perfectly for them to sabotage better moving forward. And both people right now fit perfectly to sabotage. You have World War III narratives, you have the destruction of the economy, all sorts of things that they're going to do via sabotage. And who's going to get blamed for all that stuff? You are. Those people out there who voted. And of course, they'll try to shame people like us and say, well, you didn't vote. So you're responsible too, because you allowed this bad person to get into power by not voting for the other party. Because that's how the psychosis works with these people. They constantly just get fed what to say. These things that they say like, can't complain, don't vote, don't complain. These are all things that the government feeds them to repeat to people like us. They're not thinking freely because they're not freely thinking. And of course, the other thing to talk about, in addition to all the narrative, again, with the illegals, is that all these people who are going and voting, who are not even citizens in America, are consenting to be governed by these corporations in the United States of America. And you could look at the origins of the word vote and votary. I'm sure many of you out there are familiar with votary and worship being tied in, right? There's a lot of spell casting that goes on with casting a vote. Definition of vote, right? A wish, choice, or opinion of a person or a body of persons expressed in some received and authorized way. The expression of a wish, a desire, a will, a preference, or choice in regard to any measure proposed in which the person voting has an interest in common with others, either in electing a person to office or passing laws, rules, regulations, etc., suffrage. And one of the misconceptions that people out there will automatically have been trained to think is that by you saying these things, it sounds anti-government. These are all things that the government has put out and planted in their mind, that it sounds extreme. But what's really extreme is that the government themselves are doing these things to the citizens themselves. I mean, think about how much stuff we pay taxes on. We pay taxes on things that we already own, right? You buy a house, but you buy a house with cash. Let's say hypothetically that anybody out there is lucky enough to do that. You buy it with cash, but guess what? You pay taxes every year on the land. You buy the land, you pay taxes on the land. You buy this, you pay taxes on that, right? And it's gotten worse and worse every year because people have allowed it to get worse. There's been no revolution. And that's why by controlling both sides, it's so important to them. Because when you control both sides, you give the people out there who would actually start a potential revolution, you give them a fake option into thinking, well, this would be easier than us actually starting a revolution, me going and voting for Trump. Let him go and do it. He says that he's going to do it, so I'll vote for him and he'll do it. But throughout history, real actual history, people have revolted against the things that are probably, things that are not as bad as what's actually happening now, right? I mean, the people were revolting against taxation in the past, right? The Tea Party, all these things that we've heard about. And you say, wow, yeah, they stood for a cause. People today won't stand for any cause. They just complain and then they go vote. And that's what they want you to do because you're consenting to be governed by whoever they put in front of you come next week or whatever day they decide to announce who the next president is. And then they say, you picked this person. They're responsible for voting for this person. That side's responsible for voting for this person. But you consented to be governed by whoever we picked because you put your name on the ballot when you casted it. Thus, you signed in. No different than signing up for a contract with a company when you're getting a cell phone or anything else. You have to sign a contract. That's what you're doing. You're opting in every 4 years to be governed by these wicked tyrants who are not working for you. This is not a government working for the people. And everybody out there feels that and knows that. They should, right? It's just a matter of this whole my team versus your team, red versus blue. That's what keeps this illusion going for them. It's so important to them. They get you emotionally invested in your team. And then no matter what your team does while they're in power, you'll support it because you'll say, well, that, it's not as bad. The other side's making it out to be worse than it is, right? Like anybody out there who's a Democrat who thinks that the world has been great for the last 4 years. They took jobs away from people when Biden got put in office. They shamed the American public constantly when they're supposed to be our employees, right? I've made the comparison before. If you ran a company and your boss came in, and you ran a company and one of your employees came into your office and they said, you're a piece of garbage and I want you to take this shot of heroin or I'm going to take your job and you're the boss, you would just start laughing. You'd be like, what? And then you'd say, get out, and you'd fire the person. That's how it would work, right? They want you to think it's the other way around, that we're lucky to have them, that, you're forced into this. They use psychological ops to constantly get you to consent to everything that they're doing. But my point being is that how anybody over the last 4 years can actually look at the stuff that the Biden administration did and all the prices that we're paying for food, and everybody feels it in their wallet. It doesn't matter what skin color, what party you vote for, what gender you are, right? The price of the groceries is the price of the groceries unless you're farming yourself fully, right? Or the price of anything else out there, gas, etc., right? But they get you so obsessed with the party by hating the other party so much that you forget about what your rights are. You forget about the power of the people, and you consent to these tyrants continually meddling in our day-to-day lives. And really, you could look at the guilty parties. It's more than just the actual actors who are pretending to be politicians. Look at the celebrities and what they've done to people and how pushy they are. I mean, they really need to be held accountable at some point. Remember all these people when stuff gets as bad as it's going to get in the next couple of months / possibly years, but it's feeling more and more like months. Remember these people and what they try to get you to partake in, because it's every single celebrity out there. You don't see any celebrity out there say, don't vote. Do you? Do you ever see any celebrity say, don't vote, don't participate in this? Of course not, because they don't want you to realize what this actually is. They don't teach this stuff in school anymore. They teach you that men can have babies. They don't teach you what your rights are. They don't want you to know what your rights are. They don't want you to know that over 30% of the population don't vote. And that 30% of the population actually has the right to establish a new government, right? But that sounds like too much work this day and age. Apparently, people would just rather play games on their phone and allow the government to meddle in their lives and then complain about it. So, ladies and gentlemen, on November 5th, just remember, your consent is key. And that's what they want more than anything. The consent to be governed. Giving the government its legitimacy and its power to rule over you. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless all of you as always and your families.